Anita, how's your mental health?
Questionable at all times. You know this.
Yeah, how's the mental health of your children?
Also a little bit tricky. Can I tell you my experience in trying to find therapists for myself and my kids, Mel?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is how it goes. You ask around your friends and your family for a referral for somebody who's nearby. You finally find somebody who sounds like they might work for your family. You give them a call and you find out that A, they're not accepting new patients, or B, they have a huge wait list. So you start over again and you ask people if they know anybody who would be a good therapist and a good fit. Finally, you find one, you go and you meet with them and you figure out that you don't actually like them that much. But it's been so much work to find somebody who you can go to in your area that you're kind of stuck with them. Well, do you have any ideas for how to get around this?
I do, because guess what? I've actually had some therapists that I have found on my own, which involves what you're saying. Sometimes I remember one time I was like 3 hours in the bathtub on my phone looking through websites. I was such a prune at the end. But I have also had the experience with working with BetterHelp. And it was like, I don't want to say too good to be true, but because it is true, but it's like amazing because I was matched with my therapist within 24 hours.
And you didn't have to go through all of that other ridiculous process of trying to find somebody. And here's the cool thing too, is if that person didn't work out for you, you can just switch and say, and it's not like you're committing to another years long search for somebody who you're going to jive with.
It's true. And I lucked out, or maybe just BetterHelp is really good at matching people together because I never had to change my therapist. I loved her. Perfect fit for me. And I know that some of our friends have used BetterHelp and they've had to change therapists, and boom, same day, you can change.
Easy peasy.
You can ghost your therapist. Get a new one.
I love this idea. BetterHelp is one of our sponsors. If you use our promo code trybetterhelp.com/WWDN, you get 10% off your first month. And we totally recommend it.
Yes. Get some therapy. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN. Anita.
What?
We look so cool right now. It's too bad that we're doing vocals only.
Vocals only? Audio?
Audio only, sorry. Mariah Carey, Anita Coyle.
Hi, Water Melanie.
Hello, Anita Massage.
I do.
I figured you did. I heard all the screaming. It took us 15 minutes to get the screaming to stop.
And there's no guarantees it's not starting again. Right before I came in, I was like, you guys, I got to record my podcast, so be quiet. And they're like, okay.
There they are.
What? Great idea. They're leaving.
Oh, good.
That will be better. Anyway, I said, you guys have to go downstairs and be quiet. And they're like, okay, Mom. And then 22 seconds later, like, I don't think you guys understand the meaning of the word quiet. What it means.
Nope.
Don't think they know.
Nope. They just think it means yelling a little less loud.
I don't even think that they...
Probably not even that.
Think that. No. Yeah. Little boys, they have soundtracks all the time. No matter what they're doing, they're like always making noises. Like, and you're like, what is going on? Today my 4-year-old told me he wanted to be a superhero.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, what do you want your superpower to be? Are you ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
He said, I will transform into a bowling ball.
Okay, that's
a green bowling ball.
Very specific. Love it.
Very specific. And he will jump in the air and into a bowling ball and then the bad guys.
Oh, that's actually pretty smart. Who survives a bowling ball attack? Nobody.
I don't know. A green bowling ball.
A green bowling ball. Yeah. So he can hide in the grass, remain undetected.
I didn't even think of that.
It's basically camouflage. He's smart.
I'm growing some smart ones here. How are you doing?
I'm okay, I think. I vacillate between being totally fine and being so depressed out of my mind. So I think I need to exercise more. I'm trying to work on that. I can tell that the dopamine in my brain is low.
Dopamine low.
But I can't run because of my spine. I don't like leaving my house because I'm a hermit. But I've done Pilates.
That Pilates is hard. I have my in-laws neighbor once, he's from Argentina, I think. And he once talked about how he lost 40 pounds. And somebody was like, how did you do it? He's like, oh, I ran in place in my basement. Not on a treadmill, just like in place.
Whoa.
Is that not insane?
That's dedication. Because to lose 40 pounds just doing that, can you imagine how much?
That would be a lot. And so boring. No excuses, Mel. Sorry.
It's okay. I know. I need to do better. Actually, my sister gave me a 3-month gym pass for Christmas. And so I think I'm going to try and get myself out of the house and try it. You guys, being a widow is hard. Actually, one of our widow friends and I were texting yesterday, and we want to hang out with our dogs, but we're both like, it's so hard to leave the house. Why? It's so silly. It's like, if you had told me like 10 years ago that these were going to be my problems, I'd be like, wow, what had happened to you?
Seriously. Same.
So, but guess what? Speaking of running, who are doing really great on their new treadmill?
Your dogs.
All 3 of them.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Even Jersey.
You sent me a video of one of them. The look on their face, because you were holding a spoonful of peanut butter in front of her, and the look on her face was just like, why does that keep getting farther away?
It's true.
It was just pure confusion.
And Jersey turned 8 months old, I think, a couple days ago. And so she is a puppy, even though she acts like she's the boss lady, old dog person. But it's hilarious when she first was getting on the treadmill, her front legs would kind of go, but then her back legs just stiffened and they splayed out.
So she was like stretching out.
So we are to the point where she's actually running on her own. None of the dogs use leashes, and they're doing great. I love that I bought it. I know it's weird, and I don't care. It's so fun.
Do you ever get on the treadmill? Can you get on the treadmill?
No, but I could, because the weight limit, I'm under the weight limit for it.
Dude.
So, right?
Get some peanut butter. Put it in front of your face.
Do you want to come try it out?
No.
Oh.
Because I hate the treadmill.
Oh, okay.
Did you know that the person who invented the treadmill invented it as a weapon of torture for prisoners? Because they thought the prisoners were just lounging about in the prison, and that wasn't fair. And so they invented the treadmill and made them walk on the treadmill so they wouldn't be lazy. True story.
And now everybody has a treadmill in their home.
Yes.
And even dogs.
Yes.
Okay, so you don't even have a treadmill at your house.
Of course I do.
Okay, you just prefer not to use it.
I prefer to go outside, no matter what. In fact, yesterday I went running to the top of a mountain in the snow. So.
Holy cow. Do you have special shoes for that?
Yeah, you put spikes on your shoes. They're called spikes.
If you ever get attacked while you're in the mountains, can you just karate kick the assailant in the face?
Roundhouse. Boom!
Yeah. Rex Kwon Do.
Yeah. Rex Kwon Do! Or I'll turn into a green bowling ball. Boom!
In the mountains, maybe you need to be, at least the mountains here.
Either white or... We've had such a sucky snow year. This has been the worst snow year ever that I can remember. So I need to be like a brown, dead brown looking bowling ball.
Yeah.
Because everything's brown.
How has your week been, Anita? You always have many adventures. Like every day you have like 50 adventures.
Yeah. So when you were saying that if you thought 10 years ago that these would be your life's problems, so I feel that same way. My daughter made it through a whole day of school, which was amazing. And if you would have told me 5 years ago that I'd be cheering for her to make it through a whole day of school, I've been like, whatever, because she's always loved school and just, it's been like her favorite thing. But we've really been struggling. And so when she made it through school, it was a big freaking deal.
That's amazing. I'm so happy to hear that. I've been thinking about her a lot.
I don't know why I waited so long to do this, but I wrote an email to all of her teachers and I just told them like everything. And it was just basically like, she just needs some leeway right now. She's barely functioning as a human being, let alone a student, and we don't care about school. So, the end.
Did you get responses from the teachers?
Yes, and they were all really supportive. And even though I'm like, why didn't I do this in the very beginning? But I kind of like, it's kind of this weird push-pull, because I'm like, it's like a privacy thing. You know, does she want them to know about all of her whatevers? I don't know, but I was like, screw it. So I told them everything, and they were like, oh, we knew about some of these things, but not about others of these things. And then the thing that was so, like, stabby to the heart was that her English teacher, she was like, because Jason was a junior high English teacher, She was like, oh yeah, I met with Jason in the professional learning communities that they have. So she's like, I knew him.
Oh,
And so I'm like, ah!
looking back over that time, obviously with being a widow and all this stuff, there's so many things going on. Do you think that part of why you did not email the teachers was because you couldn't even handle it? Or were you consciously being like, no, I just don't want to give information?
I think that it didn't cross my brain until soon enough. And then when it did, I kind of had this like, we need to take care of it on our own kind of a thing. Like, this is our problem, not their problem. And then we got into the territory of, but does she really want me to share all of this personal information? And then we got into the territory of screw it. It was kind of a journey.
And you're loving the new therapist.
Yes, she got a new therapist and it's been really good. She has started doing some like activities and exercises that have been really good besides just like talking about feelings. So that's been really good and really positive. Sometimes we assume that unless we had a huge life insurance payout, we don't really need to know anything about investments or even finances. But guess what? A little knowledge of finances is critical for all of us. Maybe your partner was in charge of that stuff, and now you find yourself making all the decisions. Maybe you're mad about that. Maybe I am. Nicole from the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast is here to help. She tackles financial literacy by telling the stories of women and widows and finance experts, and shares the lessons they've learned as certified financial planners. Whether you know a lot and feel confident in your financial decisions or feel unsure about all of that stuff, there is more to learn. Listen and subscribe to the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast on all podcast platforms. This ad was paid for by Rockhouse Financial, an SEC registered investment advisor.
Yay!
Yay, I know.
Things are looking up. Maybe.
Can I tell you about the funniest conversation I had with my sister-in-law via text?
Yeah.
Okay. You get this too, Mel, but when somebody dies, people will email you and be like, so-and-so just lost their husband, you know, like, and so I was laughing, haha. I even said that. I was like, haha, but not haha, because she's like, so-and-so, I just heard about so-and-so becoming a young widow. And I was like, well, do you know this person or just social media know? And she's like, social media know. And I was like, stupid dead people. And she said, I don't actually follow her. I follow a follower. And I was like, haha. Oh, but not funny, ha-ha, like sad ha-ha. She said, but 3 young kids, husband died suddenly. Gotta gather them all in. And I said, it's kind of like Pokemon. You gotta catch them all. So then she responded, do you battle them? Do they evolve? And I was like, no, we battle with them. And yes, they do evolve. And she says, what does what does a level 3 widow look like? And I said, I haven't met one yet. And she says, do you gain spikes, a fiery tail? And I said, I've met a lot of level 2s. Level 3s are very rare. Do you level up after a certain amount of time? Or are there milestones to meet? And I said, milestones, but usually the more advanced ones are also the ones in it longer. What level are you? And I said, Squirtle. Which, if you know anything about Pokemon, it's funny. If you don't, then it doesn't make any sense.
I love it. That's a brilliant conversation. It's so true, though.
Yeah, you like have to level up with all of your experiences and stuff.
Totally. And I hope we don't battle against each other ever, because that's...
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, we're together battling the world.
That's what I mean. I like that you said battling with them, but not against each other, because that would be... Oh, man. Can you imagine a widow battle all against each other? It'd be like, no, my pain's worse. My pain's worse. Yeah, well, here's my situation. Oh, yeah, my in-laws are worse. Oh, yeah.
And I would say, Squirtle.
Yep. I would just roll over and be like, here. I'm a dog now. Oh, my gosh.
It made me laugh so hard. I was like, we are, because I do feel like that. I'm like, we got to catch them all, because people are always like, I heard of this person. Like, you need to talk to them, or, you know. And I'm like, yep. We got to get the Pokeballs, all full of our widow friends and widowers.
I love it. Yeah, you guys, we've been having some fun conversations in the Widow Wives Club, so remember to join. Congrats to people who have been starting marathons.
I know. And, like, getting job promotions and, like, also hating their lives and asking if it's always going to be that way.
Yes. Also, remembering to brush their teeth and wear deodorant. That's mine.
I thought you were going to say wear diapers.
Ew.
You said wear
No
diapers.
Can we talk about something really quick? And I don't think I've talked about this on our podcast, but I know that we've talked about it in the group because somebody said something. And I don't get embarrassed about like many things ever, but this one thing I do. I have totally forgotten to brush my teeth since Scott died, and I have to remember. I know you and I have talked about it, Anita.
Yeah, because I'm the opposite. Like, I can't not brush my teeth.
Here's the thing. You guys, I don't smell or taste anyway. I've always been this way. And so I don't remember. And then when somebody dies and your time frame just totally changes. So then I forget. And then you have widow brain. So it's really bad. And I don't have kids that are going to be like, your breath stinks.
That's actually one good thing about having to wear masks is like your stinky breath. It's a good thing and a bad thing because only you can smell it.
Yes. That's actually sometimes when I notice. And so on my schedule, I have to write, remember to brush your teeth. And now I've been better about that. But now I have to remember to wear deodorant because I don't leave the house.
Yeah.
So anyway, somebody in our group mentioned something about brushing teeth. And I was so glad that they did that because I'm like, oh, good. I'm not
me
alone.
too.
I thought for sure I was the only one in the whole world that was that disgusting. So thank you to our
for not brushing your teeth also.
Yeah. So we can be widows together in stench.
Stench widows.
Yeah. Isn't that so funny how basic things you just forget about or can't do?
Yeah.
It's so weird. So
yeah, totally.
Anyway, so we have a lot of fun and weird things happening in the Widow Wives Club. So get in there.
And just remember for the widow, I know we say this a million times, but seriously, guys, we're still getting people who are submitting their request to be in the Widow Wives Club and not including a death notice or an obituary, and we are just really trying to keep this a safe space, and so we have to see that or else we're not going to let you in.
And we're sorry it's a pain. Please don't be snarky with us.
I know, it's
when
just because we would hate, like, my worst fear in life is opening people up to a bad apple.
Like a predator.
Yes, that's like my biggest fear. And so I'm like, we have to do our due diligence to make sure that's not going to happen. And we don't know, you guys.
It's the intranets.
Full of rapists and murderers.
I was watching a show last night that was people that would meet others on social media and then things like this would happen. Attempted murders or attempted... all those things or taking your money. So that's what we're trying to avoid. We know it sounds dire, but there's a reason.
Mel, I have a very, very important question for you.
Oh, okay, I'm ready.
Have you graduated from Harry Potter Lego Academy in Nintendo yet?
Well, Anita, I'm glad you asked because remember last week how I told you I had to plan in breaks for myself?
Yes.
I actually did more work on my normal work things than Harry Potter. So I have not completed the game. However, I am on the very last level.
I don't even when my kids have played that game, I just feel like you run around and like hit stuff and then Legos fall out.
It's true.
There's like goals you're trying to do.
Yeah, you still have to do goals. You have all the same goals that you have in the movie, like the same the same guideposts. So year 1, you have to go down and defeat the whatever, and it's
Quirrell. To get the sorcerer's stone.
Yes, you have to go and make Moaning Myrtle be quiet. So you have to go and you have to find a harp to play music for the 3-headed dog. You know that whole thing.
Fluffy.
Yeah, Fluffy. So anyway, but because I've been playing that, it's reminded me that I've not really watched the movies in a long time. So I've started watching the movies again too. And I actually came across a quote now that I'm a widow. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is such a widow thing. It reminded me of us. Would you like to hear about it?
Please, yes. Because I love Harry Potter, and my kids are of the age that they love Harry Potter too.
Oh, it's so good.
We had the chance to go on this little vacation, but I had to say no because it's during the Harry Potter party for 5th grade. And that's like a big freaking deal.
Do they have wands and they wear cloaks and everything?
They make wands. They wear their cloaks to school. I'm going to make chocolate frogs and sugar quills.
Yes. I think it's so fun. The more that I get into creation, like for my own music stuff or video stuff or whatever, every time I watch Harry Potter or even play the game, I'm totally amazed at J.K. Rowling and the detail and the depth in these characters. It's so amazing. So anyway,
Okay.
Would you like to hear this?
Tell us, yes.
Okay, so this is a Dumbledore quote because he was, it was the part, I can't remember what movie, first or second, where the Phoenix was in it. And the Phoenix...
that's the Chamber of Secrets.
Is that the second one?
Second, yes.
So this is in the second movie, and it was when Harry was in Dumbledore's office, and there was a phoenix, and all of a sudden it burst into flames, and he's like, "What's happening?"
Yeah, and he feels like he did it. He's like, "Oh, oops, I did something bad."
Yes. So immediately when I saw the phoenix burst into flames, I thought, "Oh yeah, well we always hear that as people in the grief community. We're phoenix rising or whatever," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, this is like gonna be relatable to death." And then Dumbledore said, "Fascinating creatures, phoenixes. They can carry immensely heavy loads, and their tears have healing powers." That's us! Except, do our tears have healing powers? Maybe. When we cry, sometimes it helps.
I've never tried to, like, cry on a basilisk injury ever, so I'm not sure, like, the power of tears. Our tears.
Okay, but what if it was outside of Harry Potter? What if it's in normal life? Like,
well, for sure, I feel like tears are healing to a certain extent because you have to let that out. So,
and we carry immensely heavy loads.
Totally true, and sometimes surprisingly so. Like we look like scrawny little birds, but we're carrying like 1,000 pounds of tortillas home from Costco.
Yep, exactly. And we can die, so to speak, over and over again and still keep growing. Also like a Pokemon.
Yeah, totally. Dumbledore is super. He's like Yoda and other, like Gandhi. They have like great quotes.
Yes.
I love it.
So there you go. That was my tie into widowdom, and my Harry Potter education has not gone unwarranted.
It's been useful for something. It's time for the Patreon shout out. Thank you to our dead husbands first. We have Dawn Satterwhite,
David Kelly,
and Katie Kuntz. You guys are the best.
For the rest of our Patreon shout out, we have Lori Farrington,
Emily Thornton,
the Fancy Lady,
Jamie Aliotta,
Christina Scambato,
Shannon Helm,
Jacinda LaRue,
Marjorie Lewis,
Black Wendy,
Ashley Hahn,
Carascara,
Jenny Taylor.
Hane.
What are these names?
They don't want their names said, so I'm making them up.
Sylvia, lover of Malo, Yarrow, and Mullen.
The Winehouse.
Rachel Barbosa.
Ileana Bell.
Anna Tracy.
Gabe Lozano.
Erin Posick.
Oh, it's her episode today.
What?
Yeah, Erin and the Baby Joeys. Jenny Barrow.
Christine Anderson.
Diana Becker.
And Sarah Morris. You guys really are the best. Thank you. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for supporting us. If you would like to be one of our patrons on Patreon, please go to patreon.com/WWDN. We have 4 levels, and the top level gets prizes. Go check it out.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.
I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
And we're just 2 young widows with a kind of a crappy internet connection right now.
And Phoenix Tears.
And Squirtle.
Trying to figure out.
Widow we do now.
Yeah, that. You guys, we're here together. Can you believe it?
Together at last. I feel like there's a song.
There's a Carpenters song. Together.
How come I don't remember that song?
Because it was in the 70s.
I love the Carpenters, though, my dad.
It's We've Only Just Begun.
Oh. We've only just begun.
Keep going.
Your sound went away, though, when you started playing.
Aw.
It was a bummer. Because we were going to have a jam session right here and now.
I just realized my keyboard was on, so I thought, why not?
I think we should do it. Mel.
What?
I'm a little bit scared of our guest today.
What? Not me.
Because she is trying to lure you away.
Yep. With Baby Joey's.
Yeah, she's like not like this scary person in the van with candy. She's like, Mel, come to Australia. we have baby kangaroos. And then she shows you pictures and Mel's like, let's go, let's go.
She
So
just speaks my language. What can I say? And it's
we
working.
might have to get a restraining order to keep you for myself.
Well, the Australian borders are closed, so she's not coming anywhere soon.
I guess that's one good thing about
You're
COVID.
safe. Yeah, but she also found a nice house that we can live in down there.
I know. It would be fun. So
maybe in a
2036.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, let's introduce our guest. This is Erin from Australia. And Erin, we will let you introduce yourself. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm Erin. I have got 2 children, and my husband Moose passed away in December 2018. I met him when I was 19. He was 37.
What?
So there was an 18-year age difference. My parents always said to me age mattered when I was a teenager. So I waited until I turned 20 before I told them about him. And we got engaged when I was 22 and married when I was 23. So Moose was in the Navy, in the Royal Australian Navy, and he spent his time obviously travelling the world. So I don't know what the attraction was. It was, I got to travel and go different places and, see bits of the world with him. And, so that's kind of where our story started. And that's my Burmese.
A cat just leapt into the screen.
I know. If I didn't, I had to let her in because she'd scratch at the door.
Speaking of cats, Anita needs to know about cats because her son is pestering her for one. I support it.
Of course you do, Mel.
Cats are way easier than dogs, Anita.
Oh, it's one more thing to take care of. One more thing that poops.
Yeah, but cats kind of take care of themselves.
Yeah, not all the way.
It would be like your most responsible child, probably, if you got it.
Maybe.
Erin, what's your cat's name?
The mum is Keita, and so she's a chocolate Burmese. And she had kittens about 6 or 7 years ago, and somehow we got convinced to keep one of them. We're going to feed it, Mum. We're going to do everything with it. But no, I think I do everything with it. So the little one's Sushi, and she's like a caramel coloured.
Oh,
so
that's a cute name for a cat.
She was white on her body and dark ears, and the points were all dark. So she looked like Sushi. So
that's cute. Erin, we got to back up a second. Where did you meet Moose? And is Moose his real name? Did everybody call him Moose? Does he have a other name too?
I hope it's short for like Moosefina.
Moosefino.
Okay, so I worked in the bank, in the state bank here, and one of the ladies that I worked with, her husband was in the Navy, so I spent a lot of time with her. I think I moved from the country, so that property that you saw that is up for sale is actually my family farm, my parents' farm. So I lived down there, and I moved to the city, and so I didn't have any friends. It was just my work colleagues. So I spent a lot of time with this friend, and her husband was in the Navy, so obviously just was moving in those sort of circles, and that's where I met him through her. I met him as Moose. I introduced him to my family as Moose. We had moose on our wedding cake because I knew him as Moose. But no.
Wait, what kind of moose? Moose and chocolate mousse? Was it a moose cake for Moose?
The animal. No, I just know. Yeah. So his real name is Lewis, but his mum is Ukrainian. So his mum called him Lukanyi, or Luke. So he didn't know that his birth certificate had Lewis on it till he was about 12, because his family called him Luke or Lukanyi, so he didn't know. But when he joined the Navy, someone called him Moose, and that stuck, and he even had Moose on his official name badge and stuff. So, yes.
So he was Moose.
So.
And you called him Moose too?
The kids called him Daddy Moose. It was just Moose. So, yeah.
Okay, I have one more question. So you didn't tell your parents that you met this guy who was 18 years older, right?
Right.
How did they feel about it when you did tell them?
I think my dad said, well, you're always strong and determined, and you're going to do whatever you wanted to do anyway. So, they accepted him. He was part of our family. We were married so I met him in 1995. yeah, 1995, and Moose died in 2018, so he was part of our family more or less most of that time. So yeah, so he was a sailor. We had in November 2018, we just celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary. We stayed in a really the fanciest hotel in our state, I think you probably would call it. And he was like, we'll go away. Do you want to go on your own? I'm like, no, I don't want to spend time with you. I want to take the kids. So we took the kids and we had a weekend. It was really lovely. And then in December, the 4th of December, I was heading out the door for work. So he was injured, and so he was actually retired from the Navy. He lived at home, he didn't go away. He was at home. He was essentially Mr. Mum. He did everything with the kids. I worked full time. Well, actually, no, he did everything with the kids within reason, everything that he wanted to do, but anything else was my responsibility. But unfortunately, he suffered from PTSD, so he didn't like crowds, and he tried to avoid places he was not comfortable. So that did mean, he would get the kids to and from school and drop them off at bits and pieces, but he wouldn't actually go to many things with them. So So on the 4th of December, I was heading out the door to work, and he'd actually had some surgery in 2017. He had some paralysis on one side of his body, almost like he'd had a stroke, but the testing was he hadn't actually had a stroke. And so after, lots of different specialist appointments, he had a mass in his spinal column, like on his spine. So we had surgery, and they said that whatever movement he got back within 6 months would be about all he was going to get back. And he still wasn't right. And after a few more appointments, it was discovered that he had a small nick in his spinal cord. And obviously, how it was explained that he must have, he moved, obviously twisted at some point, and from the growth that was in his spinal, on his spine, it had actually nicked the spinal cord. So, he was sort of balancing that and, his movement. Some days it was really good. Some days, he was just having trouble moving. It'd just be like, one day you could pick your foot up to step, and the next day he was having trouble doing those sorts of things. But he was getting around. He was going to the gym, getting the movement back, and, dealing with it the best that he could. Anyway, this on the Tuesday morning, I said I was heading out for work, and he was standing making a cup of coffee at the kitchen bench, and he was quite short and sharp. He was, obviously in pain and a bit frazzled, and he hadn't been sleeping well. And he'd been off to specialists, and they kept telling him it was his stomach. He must have had stomach problems, and, everything was fine with his heart. And he just made a comment. He was like, you need to make sure the kids are ready. And, I've got two teenagers, my kids were 14 and 16 at the time. And I guess my son was very much personality like dad's, and so they clashed a little bit. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go back and make sure Luke's up, because if Luke's not up, I'm going to walk out in this house, it's going to explode. So I raced back in to sort of say, come on mate, get up, you've got to get up and get moving. And as I walked back into the kitchen, I probably should say my parents were actually staying with us as well. So on that actual Tuesday was the awards night at the kids' school, and my daughter was getting an award, so they'd come up to be able to go to that. So mum and dad were there, and dad had gone off to have a shower, and mum was sitting at the kitchen table eating breakfast, and Moose was standing making his cup of coffee, and all of a sudden he just fell over. And I just automatically thought, oh, that's his bad leg and he must have leaned the wrong way. And then it suddenly dawned on me, actually, no, it's not his bad leg. It was his good leg, and he was down. So I had to perform CPR, which, was a bit traumatic. The kids both witnessed it. I don't actually know what they saw because I had my back to them, but I just remember screaming at them just to get out of there. I didn't want them anywhere near us. And, barking orders at mum and dad, what I needed them to do for me, and what, rang 000, our emergency. And I know it feels like forever. I think I did CPR for about 20 minutes, and I did alternate between with mum and dad because it's just too taxing. You just can't keep going. And Moose was a big man as well. So, it was just, he's huge. So just to do that, we ended up with 2 ambulances. So 2 ambulance crews came to the house. So, our kitchen's a decent size, but you've got this massive a man on the floor and 4 people trying to work around him. And, it was, pretty pretty traumatic. I went with them in the ambulance to the hospital where, they tried to revive him, more in the ambulance, which was just, for me, horrific, sitting in the front listening to that. And we got to the hospital, a local hospital to us. So they sort of, sat me in a room and said, stay here. So, and I guess in situations like this, as a mum, your first thought is your kids. So, like they're trying to get Moose bundled up into the ambulance. And I'm just saying to mum and dad, the kids were locked. The kids were in my daughter's room, which wasn't far, so they could hear things that were going on. But I was sort of like, mum, dad, you need to clean up this kitchen, because obviously there was stuff everywhere before the kids come out. I wanted the kids taken to school because Jacinta had to go and do a rehearsal for her awards. And I thought that was the best place for them to be, because it was, they could have some sort of normal, played it down. We'll be all right. Dad's gone to hospital. We'll get this sorted. And so then the local hospital, so mum and dad took the kids to school and then joined us at the local hospital. And once they had Moose stabilised, they wanted to transfer him up to one of the bigger hospitals that was close to us with the, specialist units and things. So they took to make my own way up there and, take my time sort of thing. He was going to go up into surgery and, sort of make my way up there. And so, which I did, and sat in a waiting room. And after about, 4 hours of sitting there waiting with no updates, no nothing, because there was no one around. And the fear of, if I leave here and go off to find a desk to find someone, is someone going to come looking for me? And, I've missed them. And so eventually I found someone, and they they'd just moved him up to the ICU. So they sort of took me in to explain what had happened, that he'd had a massive, basically, he had a blockage in one of his arteries, and it had literally just, exploded essentially. And that they had him like on these cooling machines that would cool his body down. And once, and like the doctor that day on the Tuesday afternoon sort of said to me, they like to give the body about 3 days in that state, like really cold, to give the heart time to heal. And then that, the 3-day mark was when they would know whether, what damage was done and how we would go. So I left the hospital on the Tuesday thinking, okay, there's hope here. Moose is a bit of a stubborn prick. Can I say that? Moose is a bit stubborn. And, he'll probably take all the time that he needs to get himself, sorted, and he'll keep us waiting, because that's what he was like. So I left, went home, and sort of said to mum and dad, I need you to not downplay this, but, there's hope here. So let's just, get through this awards night. Let's celebrate Jacinta because it's her night. And then we'll go back to hospital Wednesday and sort of see where we're sitting. So when I went up on the Wednesday, took everyone up, mum and dad and the kids, they sat down in the garden. Mum and I went up just to get an update and see where we're at. And obviously I'd said to the hospital, I don't want them to say anything in front of the kids, any updates, I wanted it all said to me so that I could process and work out how I was going to say it to my kids. So went up there, and we had this doctor that there was no compassion. He just basically took me into a room and said, we've started warming him up. He's not reacting. Basically this is, we need to switch the machines off because it's a waste of time and money. And, it's kind of, and I'm sitting there going, what? Like, seriously? Like, just really? Like, I had this kind of bit of hope yesterday, and today it's just shattered. And you did say to me that when I came in that you'd start warming him up once we got here, but you've already done that. So, and I was like, you can't do anything. I've got to tell my kids. Like, I haven't told them that this could be the end. I haven't even contemplated that. So I went and had some time with Moose, and then I went back down and obviously had to tell my kids. And, that's kind of one of those surreal moments in a movie when you see people saying things and just the whole world's going on around you, but there's no one there, if that makes sense. So we're in the hotel cafeteria, but, it had spilled out and had this nice big garden area. So we're out at a garden table, and just that, how do you tell your kids that, yeah, dad's not going to wake up and we have to switch those machines off. And then obviously the instant reaction was my daughter, who was 16, was, I want to go and see dad, and I want to see him now. And I was like, okay. And then, my son was just like, do you want to, I said, do you want to come? He's like, no. And he was just, no, I don't, he needed to process this. He needs to think about this. He needs to. So, and then as a mum, you're torn. What do you do? Do you take one child, or do you stay and try and deal with the other child? And, I say this, and I know it's one thing that I hate saying to me, but I don't know how you do it, Anita, with 4 kids. Like, you've only got two arms. You've only got 2 arms. So it's just
one for each arm and then one for each leg. Just like gather them in. Actually, you just yell a lot and hope for them. I totally understand that conundrum. I remember thinking the same thing about my daughter. Do I let her go see him? Do I not? I do not know what the right thing to do is right now. Nobody tells you what you've never thought to yourself, at what age are they ready? And the social worker that was helping us just said, ask her, and whatever she wants to do is what you should do. So it's hard when you have one of each, and nobody else came to the hospital, just my oldest. So all of this.
So I guess I was blessed. I had my mum and dad there. So I left them with Luke. And I went up with Jacinta to the ICU. But then my next problem is the ICU, I guess, essentially was like a figure 8, but like a squarish figure 8. And you enter sort of in the middle section, but Moose was in the very far. So you had to walk past, at half the ICU before you even got to his room. So, that in itself was really confronting. So I just remember saying to Jacinta, stand right behind me, put your hand on my shoulder, look at the back of my head, and don't pay attention to anything else. Just look at the back of my head and let's just walk. And, the nurse was okay that day. So that was the Wednesday. She was kind of like, explained a little bit of stuff. But, we were trying to ask questions, and she just sort of, not fobbed us off, but was just kind of like, oh, yeah, well, that's there because that's keeping him alive. And, yeah, but what's it doing? Well, it's keeping him alive. But, so that was kind of a bit hard. Anyway, we spent some time with him, and, she was processing it. And then I messaged down to my dad and said, I think we've had enough. I think we want to go home. We just need to go and, just be and talk. And obviously I need to contact family members and say, this is where we're at. And as we were sort of getting ready to walk out of his room, my dad messaged and said, stop. Luke wants to come up and he's on his way up with your mum. So we sort of sat and waited. But then, of course, I don't know that my mum would have done exactly the same for Luke. That would have just been, let's just walk through this ICU, see everything else that's going on, and then get into this room. Except as they walked into the room, Moose sort of kind of had these involuntary actions and his legs started kicking and Luke just freaked. So it was just horrible. And thankfully, near where Moose's room was a staff exit that took you back out into the main corridor, and they didn't like people using it, but I just was like, I'm going out that door. I'm not walking my kids back through all this. I'm going out that door. And so they let us out. And, obviously we went home and processed and, then had the horrible job of ringing family members. So my husband's family were in a different state to us. So I rang them to give them the opportunity, if you want to come, you need to come soon. And in the process of all of that, his sister advised me that his niece wanted to see him. She was in the Navy and she was in the Middle East. So I then had to wait.
Perfect. Just a hop, skip, and a jump.
Yeah. So they couldn't get her back to Australia until the Friday. So it was like, okay, well, I couldn't turn the machines off knowing that she was on her way home and she wanted to see him. So I just couldn't do that. So I was like, okay, I know that's what's going to happen. I'm very close to my husband, his second cousin. So this cousin is the same age bracket, well, not age bracket, but same line on the family tree as my kids, even though there's an age difference. So they lived here very close to his wife. So they'd moved back to South Australia. So I was actually liaising with them and I rang and I said, look, this is what happened. And, they had 3 little kids and Hayley just jumped on a plane and came. So she arrived on the Friday morning as well. So on the Thursday, we said to the kids, we're going to go to the hospital. And Luke was like, I don't want to go. And I said, that's fine. So I just said to Dad, and my dad was like, I'll do whatever you need me to do. I'm like, Dad, I need you to stay home. I just need you to be with Luke. And I'll take Jacinta and we'll go up to the hospital. And she had a psych appointment, a counselling appointment that had already been booked before any of this happened. So that was kind of like, thank goodness. So I popped in to see him and said, look, this is what we're going on. This is what our family is going through at the moment. And he was like, here's my personal number. You know, if anything happens, I'm available. Ring us. You know, I'll be there to help. So, yeah, so Friday morning we woke up and just sort of both, you know, Moose's cousin's wife and his niece had arrived. So I said, okay, well, we'll head off up to the hospital. Dad was going to stay home with Luke. And then Luke just appears with his shoes. And I said, what are you doing? And he goes, I'm coming to the hospital. And I was like, okay. So Dad, scrap that. Get yourself sorted. If you want to come, we're all going to go. 2 carfuls. Let's go. And of course,
Luke, come on, Luke. You got to make up your mind, which is ridiculous because you said he was 14. Is that how old you said? No 14-year-olds can make up their mind. So. No. It's just normal, but probably stressful for you because you're making one plan and then you're changing that plan and you're making one plan and you're changing that plan, all while you're going to explode.
Yeah. And the hospital was, you know, like it's, you know, I don't know, 30 minutes away, but in traffic, you know, because you're going up in peak hour traffic. So, you know, it'd be 40, 45 minutes, depending on what traffic. And they were doing massive roadworks. So it just, you know, the traffic was just crappy at times. Anyway, so we went up to the hospital on the Friday morning. So the 7th of December. And actually, no, hang on, rewind. Thursday night. So I guess I wasn't one of those movie widows or movie grieving wives. I didn't spend 24/7 at the hospital. I couldn't. I'm not a hospital person at all in the best of times. But for me, I needed to be with the kids. I needed to be processing, and being in a hospital was not a place for them to be sitting. So we had left the hospital on the Thursday and I got a phone call, and I think it was about 6:30 at night, and it was from someone introducing themselves as the organ donation coordinator, and just asking whether, you know, Moose was an organ donor, or if he wasn't, would we consider donating his organs? And, you know, could I come in on the Friday morning and see her? So I said to her, look, I need to speak to the kids. You know, basically, I guess for me in this whole crappy situation was that if I could include the kids in any of the decisions that needed to be made, I felt that gave them some control or, you know, some involvement in the situation. It wasn't just helplessness for them. So, yeah, I went to speak to the kids and I spoke to Jacinta first, and she was like, you know, I don't care. She goes, Dad, you know, Dad would want to do that. So I was okay. So I went to speak to Luke, and he I think his response instantly was like, well, they're no good to Dad, so why wouldn't we give them to someone else? Which, you know, coming from a 14-year-old was quite, you know, so it's okay, brilliant, no worries. So I rang the coordinator back and said, yeah. And she was like, okay, come in next morning. We have to fill in all this paperwork. And then about half an hour later, Luke comes back out and he goes, did you tell them that they can't have his lungs? They don't want his lungs. Like, Dad smoked. Like, they'll be no good to anyone. And I was like, yeah, that's okay, mate. I've got to go through all this process, and they test everything. And, you know, and he goes, okay, and disappears. He comes back about half an hour later again and goes, they don't want his liver either. Dad drank like a fish. They won't want his liver. So, you know,
oh goodness,
you know, him processing that, it was like, wow, why would they want those sort of things? So, yeah. So, but on the so at the hospital, I don't know if either of you had anything to do with organ donation. I'm an organ donor myself, but, you know, you don't know the process. So I made it quite clear that I didn't want anything discussed in front of the kids. I needed to process all that. And of course, Friday, I had all these people. So Moose's niece focused on Luke, so they were buddies. And Moose's cousin's wife focused on Jacinta, so they were buddies. And Mum and Dad had me. So it kind of worked in well. And, of course, ICU has this, you know, 2-person only rule limit per patient. Except in this situation, you can have as many people as you like in the room, as long as you're not interfering with the nurses or doctors doing their checks and you're not in the way of them. And obviously, if anything happens and you need to vacate the room, you have to be able to get out quick. So I left all of them. You know, I left them all in the room with Moose, and Mum, Dad and I went off to meet with the organ donation coordinator. And so, you know, I'm sure it was like a 50-page document. There was all just paperwork, just oodles and oodles. And then she goes, okay, I need to ask all these questions now. And so she starts asking questions. And And some of them are really personal, like really personal. And so she starts asking questions. I was like, yeah, okay, I think my mum and dad can leave the room now, and I'll answer these questions on my own. Because, it was like things like, obviously, how just checking how old he was, what's he done in his life, did he have sex? Has he had sex with men? Does he have tattoos? Where has he got his tattoos? Where did he have them done? Which countries? Just this whole string of just questions was like, yeah, I was like, I don't know. How do I know if he's had sex with men? I've got no idea. Like, it's just really, really confronting. Kind of funny, but really confronting as well. So it was just like, whoa.
Yeah. Same. They called me on the phone because, obviously Jason had died first. But, yeah, I could barely hear the kid who was asking me the questions. And then he's asking me all these, like, sexual partners, and all this stuff. And I'm like, this is none of your business. And plus, like, I can't even hear you. And what the, and I know they have to answer those, they have to ask those questions, but it's true. They're very personal, and they do feel really, they're a little invasive.
And you stop and think, hang on, I was married to him all this time. I don't know the answer to that question. Like, yeah, some of them were like, really like, what? So, yeah. But anyway, so once I'd signed the paperwork and said yes, she just ran. She just disappeared. And so by the time I got back to the room, they were already taking vials and vials of blood. They were, and so the kids are like going, what's going on? So then they're explaining to them that they obviously then have to, take blood and do all these tests and check everything. And I was just trying to work out, because she went through a list of all the organs, all the tissues that, what they would be interested in or what would be viable. And there was actually quite a substantial list. But then it takes, I think it was about 8 hours for them to, once they go off and, do all the testing that they do, match everything in their database, find, obviously go throughout Australia and see where in Australia who needs what. And don't ask me what sort of blood type, but he had one of the unusual ones. So, of course, then that presented itself with a challenge. So she came back and they did want his lungs. They didn't care that he was a smoker. They did want his lungs, but they came back and said they couldn't. They were no good because, and I think it was explained, you can't put a Mack truck engine into a V-dub car. So he was massive. So they literally didn't have somebody of his size that his lungs would fit into. So whilst they were viable and yes, they could use them, unfortunately, the size was an issue. They really wanted his thigh bones because, again, he was quite a tall man, and that would be really good for bone, when people needed transplants with bits of bone. But again, in the questionnaire, one of the questionnaires was about skin cancers, and he'd had some skin cancers cut off, so therefore the bones were not viable for them. So it's really interesting making that, I'm not a scientific background person, so that's interesting to make those sort of so basically they came back and they said, they were interested, they could had recipients for his kidneys, and they didn't have recipients, but they would like to take the corneas. So we said yes, that's fine. So then it came down to, okay, well, when? We need to make a decision on, when we're going to switch the machines off. And then, of course, it's it could be 2 seconds, 20 seconds, 2 minutes, 2 hours, 2 days, 2 months, 2 years. We don't know how long he's going to survive when that happens. And again, Moose was a stubborn prick. And, I'm just thinking, we could switch this off and this could be like 2 years down the track. But also knowing that, if he did recover, he would not want to be in that state. Obviously seeing the last 18 months when he was quite frustrated with his movements, from the spinal cord injury. And I'd actually asked them not to resuscitate him should anything happen, while we were there. So then to throw a spanner in the works, this was the Friday. So they'd done all the testing. They came back to us late Friday afternoon. It was actually my birthday on the Saturday. So I didn't want that to be the day. I could deal with it, but for the kids' sake, I just didn't want that. So I said to them, look, can we make it the 10th of December, the Monday? That just gave a buffer away from the 8th, gave us the weekend, allowed us, I was pretty amicable. I just sort of put it out to all the family and friends and said, if you want to go and see him, you're welcome to go and see him. I don't have an issue with that. I just don't want any photos taken. I don't want to have photos surface of him in the ICU at a later date. We took our own photos, but I don't want them to surface unsurprisingly at some other point or, for the kids to have come across them. So the 8th, when we went up on the 8th. So yeah, happy birthday to me. We got up there and they sort of said, look, he'd had a really bad night and that they didn't actually think he was going to survive that night. And, you know, we might actually need to, they didn't think he was going to make it to the 10th. So we pulled it forward and made it the Sunday, still giving me that buffer. But I did leave on the Saturday thinking, you know, I might get a phone call in the middle of the night and that's it, sort of thing. So thankfully he, you know, heard my prayers and he hung over the 8th and we made it into the 9th. Yeah, so we went up to the hospital, you know, got caught in traffic. So the hospital's ringing going, are you coming up? I'm like, we're waiting for you.
You're late for your husband's death.
Yeah,
Come on.
hurry up. So yeah, got up there and, you know, they'd obviously removed, you know, a lot of the machines and piping and all sorts of bits and pieces. And, you know, you obviously you're not alone at any time. You have to have someone in the ICU. There has to be a nurse in the ICU or, you know, there has to be a medical professional all time. So my daughter had time on her own with him and, you know, we all had our time. Jacinta decided that she didn't want to be in the room and I totally get that. So she left with Hayley and they waited, but and I stayed, but Luke wouldn't leave me. He didn't want to be in the room, but he wasn't leaving me. So, you know, he stayed and thankfully, you know, it's not like the movies. They don't go time of death is, you know, they just sort of motioned to my mum and dad that you know, he died and it was time. Because in our situation with the organ donation, Moose had to physically be declared dead before they could actually do the organ donation. Because there's two sorts. You can actually do one when they're, you know, I think it's when they're brain dead. You can actually go in with them still hooked up and do the organ harvesting, or they physically have to be dead. So in our situation, that's what we knew that would happen. And so we knew we literally only had like 2 minutes once they declared it and we had to be out of the room so they could race him to theatre. So we knew that. And I guess in organ donation at any point, like even at that point, I could have said, no, I don't want this to proceed. So we knew that we could say no. But obviously, like, you know, while we're in this hospital, turning these machines off, saying goodbye, it's in the back of your head that there's two other families. And in our instance, you know, his organs went across Australia. So you've got two families in another state that are preparing, you know, for their family members to go in for it, you know, finally have an organ transplant. So it's kind of bittersweet, you know, knowing that you're helping someone else, but you're having to say goodbye at the same time. So that was a bit, you know, bit traumatic. I guess one of the good things, you know, we had an amazing ICU nurse on the Saturday. She was young and she actually lived not far from where we live. And she actually wasn't rostered on the Sunday, but she turned up at the hospital to be our nurse for the day. So she actually went with Moose through to the theatre. She came back to see us afterwards to say, you know, and she was sobbing her heart out to come and see us and just say, look, you know, I've been with him all the way through and, you know, he's gone now and, you know, the organs have gone off and, you know, just, yeah, she was just amazing. So I think that was, you know, that sucks. That job sucks. ICU is horrible, and I don't know how ICU. Yeah, they're special people, really special people. So she was just, you know, amazing, and I guess because she was, you know, not too much older than my daughter. You know, I think she was like 22 or 23, but you know, she could relate with the kids, and you know, she was fantastic. She explained what every tube was for, what they were doing every time they moved him. And then it was kind of funny because Moose was a sailor. He had tattoos. And so she said something about one of his tattoos and we made some comment and said something about, oh, if you found the one on his bum. And she was like, no. And so then on the Sunday when we went in, you know, to switch the machines off, she goes, I found the bum tattoo. So she'd obviously like gone looking, not gone looking, but, you know, when they were...
Now I want to know what the bum tattoo is.
I know.
So the one on his...
Maybe it's not safe for
the one on his
radio.
The one on his bum was, it was the wildy coyote holding on to the roadrunner, like throttling him, and it just had now beep, beep, you bastard. So...
Okay, that would hurt so bad to get that on your butt, wouldn't it?
I've got no idea. I don't have tattoos, but, you know, we're talking about sailors, drunken sailors. So, you know.
True. Okay. Good point.
Yeah,
good point.
Yeah.
I feel like your butt would be actually not so bad. I've heard that bony areas are worse.
Yeah. Don't know. I don't have any tattoos and I don't know any.
If anybody has a butt tattoo and a rib tattoo and other tattoos. Let us know which one hurt worse.
So yeah, so that was, I guess, us, and then so Moose died on the Sunday morning. We had to put Haley on a plane back to Adelaide that afternoon because, she had to go home to her 3 babies. And yeah, and then obviously, start making those phone calls. And again, I could have set the funeral date for when it suited me, but I didn't. I looked at, all the family and what suited everybody. And we had families doing removals for their work, and bits and pieces. And so we set it for the 17th of December. And so then it was, then you get the, seriously, like, do you know how much it's going to cost me to fly across Australia? It's such an inconvenient time of the year. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that he picked, that 9th of December to die. That just, yeah, so that was pretty. And then, of course, all your government departments shut down or, are on skeleton staff. So, as I said, my husband was retired defence. So, yeah. So we contacted them on the, 10th, 11th of December to advise them of everything. Everything was, yep, that's fine. You're in the system. The payments, you get these so many payments as the widow. That'll all be sorted. Yep, cut, bang, no money. Everything's cut. No one's available to talk to. Going into Christmas, and all of a sudden, there was. So it was like, I'm just so grateful that obviously my parents were like, here, we'll give you money to get by. And, I was like, no, that's all right. I can, sort it out. Thankfully, I had some surplus in my housing loan because, again, I'm not sure how it works for you guys there, but the funeral home organised everything. And then until you pay for the funeral, you won't get a death certificate. So, and of course, you need the death certificate to then go and, prove that he's dead, to change everything and get bits and pieces and notify companies. And so, and I, as I said before, I was in a banking, I was a banking background. So our mortgage and our main account were still with the bank that I worked with, but I'd left them years ago. And of course, when I was doing the estate and stuff, and I went in there, and I didn't go in and change everything straight away because I knew that I would then have to go back when I had the death certificate. So to me, it was like, I'm not going to double handle and, race around myself. And I remember going into the bank trying to sort everything out, and they kept me waiting for like an hour and a half, which, when I worked for the bank, if you had someone come in and said, I need to talk to you about a deceased estate, someone dropped everything to find time to deal with, the grieving person. You did that. But this was like, no, you can sit and wait. We don't have anyone free for another hour, an hour and a half or whatever. So finally got someone. And of course, it's all it's all centralised. I don't know if it's like that with your banks. In the good old days when I first worked with them, the branch did everything. Whereas now, you've just got the faces taking the money or giving you bank checks or whatever. But if you're doing a deceased estate, everything gets sent off to a centralised department. If you're doing a housing loan, it all gets sent off. Someone else processes it elsewhere. So I kind of look back now and think maybe I was a bit of a bitch. But she goes, I sort of gave her the information, and I had everything. I used to process deceased estates. I knew exactly what I needed to do. I knew what paperwork they needed. I knew what they needed to do. And you could see she's got this checklist, and she's trying to run through this checklist. And it was kind of like, and then, she goes through and she goes, oh, well, okay, so this is what's going to happen. I'll put all this through now, and then someone will be in contact with you, and then you'll have to come back and bring all this information in. I'm like, no, I've got it all here right in front of me. Go back to your checklist, tick it off, because you're going to take it all now, because I'm not coming back. Like, you've just kept me waiting. I'm not coming back. It's all here. So she was like, oh, it's a bit more panic, a bit more check to see, other checklists, see what else she could find. And then she's going through it, and she says, okay, so I've changed his address to address unknown. And I was like, why address unknown? And she goes, because we don't know where he is.
Oh my God.
I just was like,
what?
I know. And I think lots of things in my head and don't necessarily say them, but I just instantly went, he's in a bag behind my bar at home. And she just,
that's like the Harry Potter, the cupboard under the stairs, the bag behind my bar. That's his address now.
She just looked at me, and then I think she realised what she'd said. And then she went, I said, don't you think you would change it to the estate of the late, care of the executor? And she went, oh, I'll let someone else in the department sort that out. I was like,
Oh
okay.
my gosh.
Because I just was just like, are you kidding me? Like, I know exactly where it is. Like,
I'm so sad that you did not ever get a letter that was like Moose in the bag behind the bar.
Delivered by an owl.
I know, I know.
Yes.
So, and I guess for me, I'm not a stupid person. Well, I don't think I'm a stupid person, and so I don't know how people that what am I trying to say? It's just how.
You don't know how stupid people do it?
No,
Is that what you're
not
going to
the
say?
stupid people, but just if you've got a, I just imagine my 80-year-old grandma, that's grieving, and and especially kind of in that era where the husband probably did everything and the wife didn't even know where the money came from. But I did everything, but just the different treatment of people, like how different organisations treat you, was just phenomenal. We have the Royal Automobile Club. That's the roadside service. If your car breaks down, you can ring them and they'll send someone out to fix your car. And that the base membership was like $95 a year. Okay, so $95. And his renewal came in, and I rang them and I said, oh, my husband's died, And she goes, oh, well, we need to see the death certificate. We need to see this. We need to see that. You need to go into a branch. You can't do it over the phone. You can't email anything in. And of course, again, they've downsized. And instead of them having, 50 branches in the state, there's now about 5. So the closest one is, an hour and a half or an hour away from me. And I'm like, it's one vehicle and it's $95 a year. Are you serious? And I was like, you know what? Don't worry about it. I said, I just won't pay it. If I just don't pay it, it just won't renew, will it? And she didn't quite know what to say to me. And then, I got about 5 more reminders after that, but I still just didn't pay it because I wasn't going to go out of my way to go, I was quite happy to email the death certificate, a true certified copy, whatever, but it's one car, $95. But then in the same respect, 20 minutes later, I rang up our insurance companies and it was, we had, 3 vehicle insurances, the house and contents, all of that. And they're like, tap, 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 yep, no worries, done. Didn't even see a death certificate. It's all changed into your name. And that's, how many thousands of dollars a year in insurance. It was just like, so, that's really looking how different organisations deal with people. And, if you didn't have the know-how and you didn't know how things worked, I just, some of the things I did, I just sat there and thought, I don't know how widows or widowers cope in that situation, because some of the companies are just stupid, or their policies are just crap. It's just, there's no compassion. There's no, very few said, and I know that's not the word you want to hear, but I'm sorry for your loss. You don't even get that. It's like, okay, well, give us the form. It's like, sorry, just, yeah, I don't know.
That's like one of my friend's sisters passed away, and they had to go into the bank to cancel her bank account. And the teller said, I can only cancel this bank account with her signature. And she's like, but she's dead. That's why I'm here. How am I supposed to get her signature? Like, go dig her up? Like, what is the deal? You'd think they would have better protocol for a lot of these organizations. It's so interesting.
Because they've, downsized locations and, outsourced production and, everything goes to other areas to do things, and I guess there's no loyalty to companies these days. And that goes for that, as workers. So, the changeover of workers is so much that they probably don't have the people that, have done, deceased estates or, know what they're dealing with day in, day out. And I said, I'll be honest, that girl in the bank, that's literally what it was. It was kind of like, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, bang, you're it. You need to go deal with that widow. And that's literally, it was, quick, pull it up on the computer, find the checklist, go through the motions, get what you need to get off her and get her out of here.
So do you think they were playing Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo in the back room for an hour and 20 minutes because nobody wanted to deal with you?
Probably.
I think they were. That was like the longest game of Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo.
Probably they've gone.
In the universe.
Gone, oh no. And then
I'm not doing it. Not it. Not it. Not it. Not it.
Probably looked me up and went, oh, and she's an ex-staff member, so they're worse as well.
Oh, it would have been perfect. They could have just said, can you just tell us what to do? And then you would have said this.
In the end, I think I just said to her, give me your checklist. Let me just see how much it's changed in 18 years. Oh, look, no, nothing's changed. Like, just take it all of you.
The dead people are still dead. the hoops that you have to jump through are ridiculous. And it's hard to keep track of what needs to be taken to where and how to do it and when to do it and what forms you need when your brain is not functioning. So I totally understand what you were saying when you're like, I'm an intelligent person and I'm having a hard time keeping track of this. How do people who maybe don't have a history in bank, in the banking industry, or people who have no experience in any of this, how do they navigate it without just,
it's even like things like, the utilities. So, the power bill and all that sort of stuff. So as I said, my husband was a Department of Veterans Affairs client, I guess is the best terminology. And he had a DVA gold card. So that was, all of his health, all of his medical was all covered. It was free for him. Thank you for serving our country. We'll look after you. And, with that also came discounts on other bits and pieces. So, our land, our house rates and government rates and power bills and bits and pieces had, discounts and things on them. So everything was in his name. And again, you ring up the power and sort of say, look, this is the situation, what do I need to do for you? Do I need to email you? Because, like the power company, there's no front offices for them. Everything's done over the phone. So, you have to email them death certificates because they don't have a real person somewhere that takes them off you. I actually looked up their website, found the instructions, for a deceased estate. And it just said, that they would transfer the account or, create a new account for, the surviving spouse or whatever. And there's no charge for that. But then you get on the phone and they're like, that's going to be a $150 disconnection fee and a $150 reconnection fee. And I'm like, no, it's not. And they're like, yeah, it is. And I'm like, and I'm not saying I wasn't, a mess, but if you didn't have your wits about you, you would just go, okay, no worries, and just take that because that's what they've told you. And I just wonder how many people have been ripped off is not the right word, but, because they didn't understand the rules. They hadn't read the information. They just went, okay, well, that's what you're telling me. That's what I've got to do. I had a few companies that I just argued black and blue with, and I was like, no, I'm not taking that. I'm sorry. And I guess for me, that was my drive. That was my, okay, well, not my anger in this whole situation, but yeah, probably you just copped me. You're not being compassionate. You're not doing the right thing, and I'm actually going to fight for this now. And I guess for me, I was kind of lucky. I work in a school, so of course, the day that he collapsed was our last day our students were at school. So I was on leave, I wasn't on leave, but obviously I took leave then. So I took leave and I think I went back to work about the 18th of January, 21st of January, around that. So, but Jacinta, my daughter, was going on a trip with school. So she left for Italy 3 weeks after Moose died. So she was like, bye. She packed up and went on this amazing trip with school, and Luke and I were left here. So, and of course, in the grieving process, that's what they sort of said to us, we were going to have to stop essentially when Jacinta got back, because Luke and I would be in a different place in the process because she wasn't with us. And, that was kind of difficult. But in a way, it was kind of good for me because I didn't have to worry about, I worried about her. She was on the other side of the world, but I could go about, going and sorting out the estate and doing all this stuff. And again, it's just so brain numbing, and you can't sit down and go, okay, well, I've got 20 organisations I have to contact, and I'm a list person. So I'd sit down and go, right, I'm going to sit here and do all this. But you can't, you get to about 5 and you think, I've just dealt with all these stupid people. I just physically, mentally taxing, and I just can't deal with another idiot today. So I was lucky that I had that time that she was away to be able to get in and just do a couple a day, and what I could deal with on the phone, I did. If not, I'd have to go off. But then in the process of it all, I don't know what it's like there for you guys, but, when I got married, you get this pretty certificate, you sign it on the day, and they give you this pretty certificate and off you go. But they've now introduced it that you actually need to, so I needed, I guess, not the license. No, it's not the license. It's like the actual official marriage certificate has got all the details on it. So all your names, your date of birth, all this other stuff. I'd never even seen one. I didn't even know that it existed, essentially, because we didn't get we just got this pretty fancy certificate. So then I had to, for DVA, I then had to produce this other document, which of course I had to pay for. So then I had to go and lodge it at the courthouse. So thankfully I could go to the local courthouse. I went to the local courthouse, paid my money, got it. And I'm like, holy shit, my details on it are wrong.
What?
Oh, no.
And so, yeah. So I was like, great. So then I rang up and they're like going, well, the only way you can change it is you need to bring in all your documentation. You have to go into the city. So into our capital city, you have to go in there to the office. You have to take everything and then lodge it with them. Now, if it's proven that it was your mistake, then you have to pay for it again. If it's our mistake, then we'll, fix it and reissue the document. And so I was like, okay. So off I trundled, gathered all my data, hour into the city, go in there, and this guy disappears into the archives and he comes back and he shoves this bit of paper in my face and he goes, is that your signature? And I was like, yep. And he goes, shows me the rest of it and he goes, well, it's wrong you've signed that document and it's wrong, so it's your fault. And I'm like, I've never even seen the rest of that document. I said, where does that document come from? And he goes, oh, that's on the day that you got married. He goes, when you sign the register and you sign, there's 4 or 5 bits of paper that you sign for the celebrant or the official records. Well, it was one of those. And I'm like going, so, it was probably under something else. And she's just gone, bang, sign here, here, and here, which is what I've done. But my date of birth was wrong, listed wrong on it. So therefore, it was just like, are you kidding me? So I needed this.
Dying is so expensive.
I know.
And they get you on every little thing. They're like, a death certificate, that will be $70. And you're like, what? And then everybody wants a death certificate that's an original one. And for Jason, I had to, and Mel, probably you too, my first death certificate said cause of death pending.
Yeah.
So I had to buy those.
Same.
And then I had to go buy the ones that were when the autopsy finally came back. So then I had to buy more.
So seriously, you have to provide an original one to organizations.
And sometimes it's the most ridiculous organizations. Like I remember Scott had some season tickets for theater and they required a death certificate. Then you go to something that's more official and they're like, oh, we don't need that. Like you said, your insurance. They're like, oh, okay, we'll change it. It's like,
yeah, just raise your hand and say like, oh yeah, I promise he's dead. They're like, fine. But then the $95 a year car people want the original death certificate.
I was so mad at the theater thing that I almost pulled out on my phone the picture that I took of Scott laying dead on the table because he had like black eyes and stuff. And I almost did that crazy widow thing, but I didn't. But it's just like, there's so much to deal with, just, I don't know, just with the death. And then you add all these ridiculous things on it and people being jerks. It's like, it's so hard. And I think we deserve prizes for not punching people in the face.
Yes. Do you think that people come in, Mel, with that excuse and they're like, I need a refund, my person died. Like, do you think that that's like a thing?
Well, remember when you were like in high school and junior high and you're trying to get out of school and it's like, oh, well, my grandma died. And they're like, you've had 7 grandmas die. I don't know. I bet it's like...
I never did that, but also we live in Utah, so it's
possible. Well, I bet there are, of course, people out there that do fraud for their living, that try to like scam people. Yeah, that's like their vocation is fraud.
Yeah, but there's like nurses, doctors. I do fraud.
Yeah, and so I bet there's probably the majority of people do not try to scam people, but the scammers scam. But scammers gonna scam.
It's really interesting because, like, I was saying before about the money and how they said, that with his pensions and stuff, and because I now receive a war widow's pension. That would all be transferred over and all that crap. Well, the whole problem was, and so I needed that marriage document for the Department of Vet Affairs to prove that I was married to him. And the whole reason that the payments had stopped was because they reckon they didn't know who I was. And I was like, are you serious? You guys are paying an education allowance to me for the kids. How do you not know who I am? No, you have to come into the Department of Vet Affairs, again, in the city, and provide, your birth certificate, marriage certificate, his death certificate, the kids' birth certificates. You need to prove.
And a urine sample.
Yeah. And tell me what colour knickers you're wearing today. And
show him your bum tattoo. I think that was on the list too.
So, yeah, I was just like, are you serious? Like, it was, you've been paid. paying an education allowance to my kids for the last 3 years, and you don't know who I am. So sorry, who have you been paying that to? Like,
Like,
Fraudsters.
connect the dots, you guys. Come on.
That is not no, there is no connecting the dots. There is not the ability in bureaucracy to connect any dots.
And then you have to laugh at this and because I'm civilian, I'm not defence, I'm civilian. And so like in the defence world, so I obviously get the war widow's pension, but my kids get an orphan's pension, because they are orphans. I'm like, hello, but I'm still here. Yes, but in the defence world, they're orphans.
I was watching a TV show and they said that. They said, you're a mother have an orphan. And I was like, that's what my kids are. They're a mother have an orphan. Because you have a mom. Erin, while you've been telling this story, the thing that has struck me is you seemed to be thinking, I don't want to say clearly because that maybe negates the stress that you were going through, but just that you had the wherewithal to think of your kids and to ask them their opinions and to ask them about the organ donation instead of just making all those decisions and to say, we don't want you to take pictures. I just feel like your head was screwed on enough that you were able to make really good, thought out decisions. So I want to give you a high five for rocking it during the death period or whatever, because a lot of those things would not have even crossed my mind. So good job on that.
Thank you. And I guess for me, it was a shock. Obviously Moose dying or, having the heart attack. But I guess for me, I guess I'm one of those, I've put everything into my kids, and I guess for me now, now that I'm a widow too, it's kind of like, who am I? Like I've now got to find myself, because my kids, my eldest is now 18. And if this damn pandemic wasn't on, she would be gone. She plans to study abroad, and, she just wants to, and so she's going to be gone. And reality is, hopefully my boy might stay home a bit longer, but, he might be gone soon too. So now I've got to kind of not reinvent myself, but find out who I am, because for so many years I did everything for my kids. My whole world revolves around my kids. And I guess for me, that was my, this is really awful and confronting for kids. And as I said before, I'm not a hospital person. Like my daughter had to go and have her wisdom teeth out this year, and I'm the one that passed out while because I seriously, I don't know what it is, whether it's the heat of them and the smell, I don't know what it is. I just don't do hospital. It's just awful. So and and for me, this could make or break my kids. This could be, my kids could go totally off the rails for this devastating thing that's happened to them at this point in their lives. And, I wanted them to have some control over what had happened to them. And I guess I can compartmentalize things quite well. So for me, I didn't matter. Not that I didn't matter. My kids had to come first.
Yeah. Well, you can deal with yourself later, but I'm just still impressed that you thought to deal with them in the time before, because I think most people would have just done whatever and then looked back and said, crap, now what do we do? But I have the same concerns. Like, what if this messes you guys up what if you guys turn out terrible because your mom's a crazy person now because her emotions are all over the place and, all of that kind of thing. I wanted to ask you about the organ donation also, because I just know in the Widow Wives Club, you've posted a few things about that. The organ donation people, I don't know what you call them, they've contacted you, haven't they? Or they've let you know, put you in contact with the people who received the donations, or at least...
So legally in Australia, I cannot know who's got those. I don't know who they are. All I know is that both the kidneys went to the eastern states, and they went to two different people. And both of those recipients had been in hospital for some time, like on dialysis. That's right, kidneys, dialysis. Yeah. So they'd been in hospital for some time. And because then that's the next bittersweet thing is I can ask at any time how those recipients are going. I contact my coordinator and just say to her, I just want to touch base and see how things are going. But that's actually really scary things to do, because it's kind of like, I don't want to hear that something's happened to them. Like, you know,
Like his kidneys were
but for
wasted.
me,
Like really, that's kind of how you'd feel, right? Like they just died. Well, that was a
yeah. And
waste. I didn't say that
I
out
guess
loud.
for me, that's part of him still living somewhere, helping someone else.
Yeah, okay, that was much more magnanimous than what
Sorry.
I said.
Um, and I guess for me, part of
No.
the healing process is, once you've been through that organ donation system, you've got the coordinator that you can still contact. They're I don't know what his title was, but they offer you counselling service. The hospital offered us counselling, and they still touch base with you. So like this year when I was in no state to do it last year. Sorry, I just got a tissue. I was in no state to do it last year. I couldn't. But this year, they send you out a survey and ask whether, if you'd be prepared to do anything to help the organ donation organisation. So I said, yeah, I'm happy to help out at, whatever you would like me to do kind of thing. And so this year I've actually done 2 presentations for them, and I've actually got a massive one tomorrow. It's the state, tomorrow they have a state, like a memorial service, and they invite anyone that have any family members that have donated organs, and then anyone that's been a recipient of a donation, and they have a big event, and they have a tree of life, and you write messages on the leaves and they stick it on the tree, and it's down on the beachfront and things like that. So I've actually been asked to speak at that one tomorrow as, from a donating family's perspective. But I've actually, as I said, I've done 2 this year. I did one to a medical professional group, and I did one in a school. So, to a group of students doing their health studies course. But it's really interesting because if I look at the stats here in Australia, for example, in 2019, there was approximately 80,000 deaths in hospitals within Australia. But of those 80,000, only 548 organ donations. So it's only like 1% to 2% of people who die in a hospital can be an organ donor. And, that's for a variety of reasons. Like in our instance, they obviously couldn't take Moose's heart because it had exploded. They couldn't take a couple of his other organs because of the deprivation of oxygen, so that those organs were damaged. So, and then you have to find someone that's a match. And as I said, in his instance, his lungs were perfect, but they didn't have someone of the same blood type and size that they could take them for. So, and in Australia, organ donation is another interesting thing here because it's not compulsory. So, I think in some countries it's compulsory, and then you kind of you can say no. Whereas in Australia, it's an opt-in service. So you can opt in and you have it on your driver's license. You can say, yeah, I'll be an organ donor. But if I'm an organ donor and something happens to me and my kids or my mum and dad, whoever my next of kin is, says, no, I don't want those organs taken, the family has the final say. So regardless of whether
That's the same in the United States.
Yeah. So, and I just, for us, and as Luke put it perfectly, they were no good for Moose. They were no good to him. He was dying. He couldn't take, his kidneys were no good to him. But we could help someone else. And that's given to other families, their loved one longer with their loved ones. So, I'm obviously an advocate for it because I just think there's so many people out there that, that need help that don't get it. So, and I do have to laugh about his corneas because obviously when they organ donation for corneas, they didn't obviously have anyone to give them to, but they actually last a bit longer than other organs. And so they contacted me and they go, we didn't actually have anyone that could accept his organs. So what would you like us to do with them? The corneas. Would you like us to return them to you? Or do we just want us to destroy them? And I'm like, well, yeah, can you just post them back to me? No.
I'm going to make a necklace out of them.
The bag behind the bar. Remember, that's the address to post it to.
And I'm like, are you serious? Like, their corneas, like, how much dust are you going to get if you cremate them? Like, so, but thank you for asking. She goes, no, we couldn't use them because they were too delicate. And I'm like, I just laughed. I'm like, are you serious? And she goes, yeah. And I said, there was nothing delicate about my husband. Like, his corneas are too delicate.
That's crazy. So because of, we didn't know why Jason had died immediately. The only thing that they did use was his corneas. And my son just a few weeks ago found this out. I think it's because I got a mailer. Like they send you something in the mail every quarter or something, thank you or whatever. And I was looking at it and he was like, they took parts of Dad's body. And I said, yeah, kind of the same thing. He didn't need him anymore, but he was upset. He was like, they shouldn't do that. That's so mean. They shouldn't be taking his body parts, and it was a little bit hard because he's younger. He's only 10. But it was hard to explain all of that to him. And so they were able to use his corneas, and then they did skin. They could take his skin. And then the other thing that was so funny is they wanted his adipose. And adipose is fat.
Oh.
And I was like, yes, you can take all the fat you want. I'm sure that he would give it to you willingly. The other kind of weird thing, though, is that they wanted to take his bones, and I wouldn't let them have his bones. In the moment, I was like, nope, you cannot have those.
Keep the framework intact, but you can take.
I just know. I've just heard that it's pretty brutal when they remove the bones, and so. Ooh. I was just like, I can't deal with thinking about that, even though it doesn't make any sense. But anyway.
I'm like curious because I never had to deal with organ donation. I assumed that Scott was an organ donor because that's the type of guy he was, but I never heard a thing about it. So all I know is that when I saw him, they put everything back after the autopsy into his stomach in a bag and sewed his stomach back up. I'm like, why is his stomach so big? They're like, oh, well, his organs are in this bag, in his body.
That's like a turkey.
I know.
It's like what they do with a turkey.
I know.
No, but I said, just the organ donation. Going back to you, Anita, with your son. I guess for us, I've had colleagues that have had kids that have had cancer, and had treatments and needed bits and pieces. So I guess for us, not. Talking to the kids about it. And, I did have someone in this last, recently say, I would never want to be an organ donor. They're not cutting me up to take my bits. And it was kind of like, I just hope that no one in your family needs a donation of anything. If you've got someone on dialysis and the reality is, you've got weeks left to live with them, and your attitude is I wouldn't give anything up to help someone else. Well, it isn't any good to you. And I know that everyone has different beliefs and things like that, but I just hope that if nothing ever happens to your family, that you need something. Because if you have an attitude like that, then what right do you then to turn around and say, yeah, put me on the list, I want to donate, I want someone to give me something, when you're not prepared to donate yourself? So, and I guess what I was trying to say is like, maybe, I don't know how you explained it to your son, but, whether it be, if you've got a child that's, having lung issues and it might need one lung to help them, that's where that like trying to explain that that's somebody else helping them. And I know it's different when it's your dad. I get that.
He was just, I explained it like that. I said, some people are going blind, and so they could use the parts of his eyes so somebody else could see again. And then he was like, somebody else has Dad's eyeballs in his head. And I'm like, not his full eyeballs. They cut his eyeballs open first. And he's like, what?
That's worse.
Why would they do that? Yeah. And I'm like, well, because they couldn't see, and so now they can see. And he's like, this is terrible. And I was like, okay.
Eyes are probably not the best choice. Decision.
Yeah, I'm like, now is just a hard time to try and explain this to somebody who doesn't have all of his reasoning skills. You know what I'm saying? He's like, they have his eyeballs in their, ew, gross. And I would have given Jason's kidneys and all of those things in a heartbeat. And I actually felt sad to some extent that they didn't use them.
The other thing that sort of kind of surprised me is, like, I did this and I've, shared some things on my Facebook about our journey, and she was my bridesmaid. She actually came back to me and she was like, thank you so much for sharing that. She goes, I am actually the recipient. I got a heart transplant. And she goes, and I never considered what the donating family had gone through. Like, I guess because for them, they are so sick, they don't contemplate where this piece came from to help them. That's just, hey, you've got a new heart coming, here it is. So, that was really to be able to have that, hear it from the other side, like, how appreciative she was that someone someone out there had said, hey, look, yep, I'm happy to be an organ donor, and if you need anything. And so she got a new heart out of it. So that's actually, to hear the other side of the story is quite amazing as well. So yeah, but
Erin, you become an expert on organ donation, which I'm pretty sure you didn't set out to do
no.
in the beginning of your life.
Moose was cremated, right? And Liz's husband was cremated. Do you think that there is a correlation of people that are more willing to be an organ donor if they are also going to be cremated versus burial?
So it's funny because I think I would have, if I was planning to cremate Jason, I almost think I would have been more willing to donate his bones.
Totally.
Because I would have been like, he's going to be gone into powder anyway, instead of like sitting in a coffin all mutilated. I hate to use that word because that's a really strong word, but that's how I felt. You know what I'm saying? That's why I was like, I can't do it.
Yeah, you see, and I guess to me, I didn't even think of that side of things. So I'll be honest with you, I don't even know if Moose wanted to be an organ donor. I was like, I can't even remember that fact, seriously.
Shouldn't have died then,
Yep,
Moose.
it's your own
Shouldn't
fault,
have died.
Moose. Sorry, not sorry.
It was written in his will that he wanted to be cremated. So I knew he wanted to be cremated, but it just, I didn't know, and that was we had to face that decision, and that's the thing now here. If you're an organ donor, you have to tell everyone, I'm an organ donor, and if anything happens to me, you need to make sure. And I've actually got another friend who said to her husband, I'm an organ donor, and if you don't donate my organs, I will come back and haunt you. I don't care. This is my decision. I'm gone, but that's my decision. So, yeah. So, I get
organ donor. I am. It's official. It's on the podcast. Yeah. You can give away anything you want of me.
Will you please tell us and our listeners about how you can foster a baby Joey?
Okay. So
in Australia.
Now these days you have to actually have a license. So you've got to register or, go through, I guess it's kind of like, not like fostering kids, but you do have to apply and be proven that you can actually care for the wildlife, because they're Australian natives. So for me, my dad actually came home, I think, with a kangaroo in the car one day. I don't know how old I was.
That's like my dream sentence.
I don't even know how old I was. Young, 8-ish, I suppose. And I don't even know where she came from, but her name was Holly. And Holly lived with us for years, and she used to be in our backyard when we lived in town, and then they bought the farm. So Holly went out and, spent her years out on the farm. And and then over the years, because mum and dad had the property and they didn't have dogs and they didn't have shooters on the farm and things like that, and you end up with them here in Australia because, reality is a lot of them are roadkill. So, they're stupid. They jump out in front of you when you're driving on the country roads. If you see a dead kangaroo on the side of the road, if you're compassionate, most people would stop and check. If it looks like a fairly fresh one, you do stop in case there is a joey in the pouch. And in those instances, they don't always survive because obviously they've been through the trauma of the car hitting them as well. And sometimes it can just be, like the one that they've got at the moment, Opal. Her mum was just really sick. They don't know what was wrong with the mum. They just found her and she wasn't moving. And so whether she'd been bitten by a snake and was paralysed, I'm not sure. So, but they take, okay, so for a kangaroo, a human takes years to grow to their full capacity, whereas a kangaroo actually does all its growing literally in the first 18 months. So they go from, they're literally, I don't know, a couple of centimetres, not quite, they're not an inch big when they're born, and they actually crawl up so the mother births them, they crawl up into the pouch and then they have to latch on. So there's actually a high non-survival rate, because if they don't make that, trip, then they don't live. Kangaroo mums are amazing. They can actually have 3 babies on the go at once of different ages. They can have one that's out, they can have one at foot so that doesn't get into the pouch, but then they can have 2 different ones latched onto the 2 nipples that are different stages, and she produces different milk to foster those babies, to feed those babies. So, so it's quite, so they go from, tiny to, big within, 12 months. They do all that growing. So if you foster one, there's a vet in South Australia that developed a formula called Wombaroo, and it's actually for baby wombats and baby kangaroos. And so it's actually really high fat content milk because they need, got to fatten them up pretty quick to get them moving. So, and then the teat that they drink out of is a really long, it's about the length of your middle finger. It's quite a long, skinny teat because that's what the mum has. Because if they're at foot, they would just put their head in the pouch and hook on for a drink. So, it's quite interesting.
I'm learning so many things right now.
I know, me too. So, organ donation and baby Joey's.
Yeah. So like mum and dad have had a variety of foster ones over the years for different reasons. One of the ones they got actually had no fur at all. That's how tiny it was, that it actually hadn't even grown its fur. And so they had him for a couple of days, and eventually they were like, okay, well, we think he's going to live. So now we need to go and do something better for him. So they actually went to the, you guys have heard of Ugg boots? The sheep. Yeah. So there's a place near them that makes Ugg boots. So they actually went out to the Ugg boot place and had them make these sheepskin pouches to put this Joey's in. And then the Joey lived in an esky. For every time they turn up, they rock up with an esky or a cooler with the kangaroo in it because it kept a constant temperature. And my dad would be heading off to bed with this pouch, and off he'd go and hop into bed with the kangaroo because it's like a baby. It has a constant temperature. It needs to be kept warm. It needs to.
This sounds like a lot of work.
Anita, we have to move to Australia now.
Okay, wait, Mel, stop. First of all, I'm pretty sure I just heard my 4-year-old he's like dumping popcorn into the popcorn maker right now. So That's a terrifying noise. Scary. And by the way, I just saw this online the other day. Did you know you can own a kangaroo in the U.S.?
Yes, it varies by state.
Yes, in South Carolina and West Virginia, you don't need a permit. In Washington, Idaho, Nevada, New Mexico, Texas, Illinois, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Maine, you need a permit. And the rest of the places you can't. Utah, you can't have one. Just FYI.
Oh, so we could move to Idaho. But I'd rather live in Australia. If I'm going to have a baby Joey, I want to be in Australia at the source.
Of the okay.
They are pretty cute. So, yeah.
I call in, let's see, who knows? Maybe the year 2029. Widow wives party at Erin's parents' house with baby Joey's.
Well, they're actually selling. They're downsizing. The farm's got.
And they still have Joey's?
Well, the farm's got farm stay cottages on it, so it's a holiday. Someone could buy it and rent out the holiday cottages and make an income. But what they're actually looking at doing is, downsizing. And so we've been looking for properties and make sure it's got a bit of garden so you can still have the kangaroos.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes. Mel will be devastated if she loses her kangaroo connection.
I'm sure we could find one if she comes anyway.
Okay, I'm holding you to that. Oh, man. Erin, thank you so much for joining us today. We really learned a lot about organ donation. It's not something that we've talked about before, so that was very informative and very fascinating. And just a reminder to our U.S. listeners, if you go to organdonor.gov, there's a lot of facts on there. If you have questions about it, you can sign up to be an organ donor. It has statistics like 90% of U.S. adults support organ donation, but only 60% are actually signed up. So we will link to that in our show notes. And then if you live in a different country, Erin is an expert. She can answer all your needs for Australia. And hey, Karen's from Canada. Can you figure out your Canadian organ donation system? And David Kelly, please get some more listeners because you're our only England person.
Can you guys hear the popcorn in the background being made?
Oh, man.
I don't know what I'm going to find when I go out there. Remember to check out the Widow Wives Club and answer all the questions. Come join our community. We're growing. We've got a lot of comments going now. It's really great to be able to support each other and to be able to talk to people who kind of understand some of the issues you're going through. And it's kind of nice because as we grow, there are going to be other people who share your circumstances to a certain extent. So that's really nice to be able to talk to people who have similar experiences to you, or similar age kids, or no kids, and all of those different variables.
Or if you have questions about wombats and kangaroos, Erin is in our group, so she will be there as well.
You can ask all the questions. Also, check out our Patreon. We love the support that you guys are giving us, allowing us to keep going with the podcast and to make things a little bit easier for us. And we hope you found this episode interesting and helpful and insightful. So Until we talk to you again, I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
I'm Erin.
And we're just two young widows and a baby Joey expert trying to figure out
Widow we do now. This is my favorite thing to discuss with you.
Tell me, what is it?
One of my favorite things. I do enjoy tacos and cheese and dogs. This is about how you cannot pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a phone plan, especially when you're a widow, your person is dead, you might have kids, you might need another option, and you just want your phone to work, you want unlimited texting and service, and you want it to be like $25 a month.
It blows my mind that they have plans that start at $15 a month. That is so cheap. And the cool thing is it uses other 5G networks, and so you don't have to pay extra for that, and you still get great service.
Yep, Anita and I have traveled all over, and I have used my phone. So I highly recommend it, and my mom's even on it. When my dad died, we put his phone down to the cheapest plan, which is $15 a month. And I think my mom's on the $20 a month plan, and it's so worth it. It's so much cheaper than what we were all paying before. So I highly recommend it if you're on a budget or not. Who cares? Ryan Reynolds is in charge of the company, and they send you free stickers with Ryan Reynolds temporary tattoos. It's kind of the best. So if somebody wants to sign up, what can they do, Anita?
Go to trymintmobile.com/WWDN. Seriously, you guys, such a great idea. Save yourself some money.
And if you're worried about losing data or having any changes with your phone, not going to happen. They walk you through it. Everything's fine. It's the easiest process of all time. Again, that's
trymintmobile.com/WWDN.